working on project number 5, Your Body Speaks. Running is the #1 participation sport today. Carolyn explains that when she was growing up, they had walkathons for 20 miles to raise money for organizations. With our fast-paced lives, today there are races almost every weekend to raise money for a variety of causes. Carolyn started running 6 years ago, and it has changed her life. She says, "I can honestly say I was born to run." The title of her speech is Born to Run. Carolyn Born.
So as many of you might already know, I have 8 children. Now, it wasn't that difficult to lose the weight after each child, except there was that last 5 pounds that never really seemed to go away. And if you multiply that last 5 pounds times 8, that put me about 40 pounds over where I started when our family first began. So I knew that I had to do something about that, and I decided, why not go running? Now, how many of you are runners or would describe yourself as an avid runner? Wow, there aren't many hands going. How many have tried running and it was miserable and you're glad you quit, maybe? Okay. Well, I was one of those that going running meant that I went about 50 feet maybe, and then I walked another maybe 100 feet, until maybe I could get the gumption to go another 50 feet, and that's kind of how my running career began. And then there was that voice in my head when I got a little better at the running that said, "Oh, you are too tired for this. Your feet are so heavy. This is so impossible." And then that other voice that said, "Just stop already. This is not any fun." Until I actually read this book called Born to Run. Has anyone ever read that book by Christopher McDougall? It changed my world. There were 2 things that I learned from this book. Well, I learned a lot of things, but 2 that really stood out to me and changed my whole perspective. So the author, he goes to the Copper Canyon in Mexico, and he wants to meet the Tarahumara Indian group and learn exactly what their secret is, because they were these amazing runners that could run forever and not seem to even have anything that fazed them about their distance that they were running. And the author had tried everything, and running was, he had almost given up on it. His feet hurt, his knees hurt, the shoes, he'd had orthotics, he tried the whole gamut, and he thought he was going to have to give up running until he went and met these Indians. And you know what he learned? It wasn't the special shoes they wore, because actually they either ran barefoot or they had just pieces of old tire wrapped around their feet. It was that they just loved running. They loved running. Imagine that. So I thought, all right, if they just love running, then it isn't about this little voice in my head saying these things. I just have to make up the decision that I enjoy running. So from then on, I decide when I pass someone, I just smile and say hello, even if they did have the iPod earphones in their ears, and I would just enjoy it. Now here's the second thing I learned that I thought was fascinating. It was this study they did, and they found out that when people were in their 20s and were runners, whatever they did, by about mid-20s, they just couldn't get any faster. They'd reached their peak of speed at that age. But guess what? By the time they reached maybe their 60s, they could reach those same speeds of running. So what does that tell you about you're too old to run? It's not true. That's totally a mental thing that we tell ourselves, that we are too old, we're too tired, we're too something or other, and we can't do it. So if they could run those speeds in their 20s, then who says when I was in my 40s that I couldn't become a runner? It was totally a mindset. So I decided, all right, I'm going to run those hills. I'll run those mountains, and what will I do? I'll have a smile on my face, and this is going to be fun. I also discovered after mile 1 and mile 2 and mile 3 that it would be kind of nice to have somebody to go running with. And I was talking about this with my friend, and I said, if I just could find someone that wanted to get up and go running with me at 5 a.m., it would just be the greatest thing. Thinking that who would want to get up and go running with me at 5 in the morning? And she said, I'll go. So that's when it began. 4:30 in the morning, the alarm goes off, and we started running. And I said to her, I've actually thought about running a half marathon, thinking that was a really lofty goal. And she said to me, but Carolyn, that would be way too easy. Let's run a marathon. And I don't know if it was the 5 o'clock hour of the morning or what it was, but I agreed. So we began our training of 6 months of getting up at 4:30 in the morning and putting on as many articles of clothing as we could so that we could be out running at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that went on till about May, and by then we were running 15 miles, we were running the longer distances. Our race was coming up. And on that Saturday, we were supposed to run 20 miles. She said to me, Carolyn, let's just run the Ogden Marathon. It's kind of a warm-up to the Utah Valley Marathon a few weeks from now. And again, it was the early morning hour, I don't know what, but I agreed to run that marathon. So there we were, 4 o'clock in the morning on that bus, riding up to the top of the marathon race route at 4 o'clock in the morning, and everyone's chattering away about the races they've won, the places they've been, the experiences they had. And so then they turned to me and they said, so what races have you run? None. So not even a half marathon? Nope, not even that. A 10K maybe, or like a 5K or something? No. I have no idea what I'm getting myself in for. But let me just tell you that I took those two theories to heart. Smile and enjoy the run. And secondly, you're never too old, because I was 20 years older than my running partner. And we kept up with each other. And I made it to the end of that race, and I did run that other race 3 weeks later. Now, I haven't run a marathon since then, but what I have determined is that running has brought so much joy. There is something beautiful about 5 a.m. in the morning and the quietness of the roads and the weather and all that's a part of it. And I've made great friendships along the way. And yes, that 40 pounds is a thing of the past. Thank you.